Hello, everybody. All right, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? So let's start here today. Since you found your way to me, I'm going to guess a few things about you. I'm going to guess that you're super thoughtful, that you're very self aware, you're intuitive, you have a phenomenal growth mindset, you are working hard to bring everything that you want into being. You're doing the steps and you're still not getting what you want. My guess is that you ask the question, why does all of the things that I'm doing, why does all this action never seem to create the certainty or the abundance that I'm looking for? Why? What's going on? What's going wrong? What's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? And my friends, that is exhausting. It's exhausting mentally and it is exhausting physically. Let me give you an example. So let's say that you launch a new program and there's crickets. Things have gone okay, right? You've launched in the past, things have gone okay there, but this time it's crickets. And of course, first thing happens is you experience that gut punch, right? It happens to all of us when things don't go the way that we want them to do, right? That sick feeling in this pit of your stomach. So you experience that gut punch, and you don't ever want to feel again, right? Because it feels horrible. And B, you really need to create income. You really want to maintain a better flow. So to make all of that happen, you sign up for another course, you rewrite your website again, you change your offer, you look at your languaging, you adjust your pricing, and you find ways to push a little bit harder, do a little bit more, do a little bit more networking. And the harder that you work, the more exhausted you become, and the results don't necessarily change. So, what's going on here? Why are there some places where you can put in a little bit of action and you get everything that you want, or you get everything you expect? Let's say it that way. And then there are these places where you do everything that you need to do and it never happens. It never comes through. I want to answer that question today. And I want to talk about something that I don't hear discussed very often. You cannot out action emotions that are driving your behavior. Let me say it again. You cannot out action emotions that are driving your energy and your behavior. Action isn't the problem. When you find yourself in a cycle of working really hard and not getting what you want, that action is often a response to the disappointment you've been having. And therefore, it's not effective for a number of reasons that you just might not know about. So let's talk about it, shall we? What do you think of when you think about disappointment? Do you feel it in your body? Do you feel it as an emotion? I would say that most people that I talk to think about disappointment as being an emotion, something that you feel, something that you have to move through, and something that eventually just goes away, right? Or it's something that you get over. What I've seen, however, is that repeated disappointment does something different. Repeated disappointment in an area of your life that it's not just important, but when you have disappointment in an area where you just know down to your core that this is something that's supposed to be yours. It's something that is really supposed to be happening. It's part of your soul script. It's part of who you are. It's in your DNA, right? When you have disappointment after disappointment after disappointment in that area of your life, something happens. We end up making some decisions that we're not really conscious of. We start asking questions like, can I trust there to be the support that I'm looking for? Can I trust life itself? Can I trust that I am part of this greater divinity, this universe, and that if I follow the mathematical formulas that I get what I want? Like, can I really trust that? Can I trust myself? Is it safe to hope? Is it safe to open my heart to receiving? And once you have disappointment after disappointment, sometimes that answer starts to turn into, well, maybe not. Maybe I can't trust. Maybe I can't hope. And those are wounds that run so deep that we often do something to mitigate them. Again, this is not a conscious process. We mitigate them by adapting. We mitigate them by creating new patterns of action or new patterns of behaviors so that we don't have to feel all of that we're feeling. Okay, and again, this is not a conscious process. It's something that happens, it almost is automatic. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But before we do that, let's talk about what am I even referencing when I'm talking about disappointments. So, of course, there can be present moment business disappointments, things like I said at the beginning, launches that don't launch, programs that don't fill, clients who say yes and then they disappear, unexpected financial bills like having to redo a website or having to purchase new technology, really having money that comes in and then leaves, having a program that works for a while, like you get into the groove and then all of a sudden it just lets go. It goes away. Okay, so those are some of the disappointments that can happen. You can look at it from a relationship angle, relationship disappointments, not feeling chosen, not feeling seen by your community, not being seen by the community that you know that you're here to serve, being let down repeatedly, whether that's from colleagues or clients or any sort of professional relationship, right? There can be personal disappointments, working really, really hard and not getting the results, wanting something so deeply and watching the months and the years pass. And that can come out of business, that can come out of personal, that can come out of any kind of relationship. But really wanting something deeply and not receiving it. We can also move the lens back and look at the roots of where some of these disappointments come from. And that often it comes out of disappointments that you experienced as you were growing up. Right? Maybe you were shamed for having emotions, told that you were too much, told that you were too sensitive, ignored when what you really needed was some kind of support and attention. Maybe you were criticized when you showed your true self, right? And with those patterns, what you end up learning is support isn't guaranteed. And when you learn that in a core way, that follows us into adulthood. And here's why. When we're experiencing all of that disappointment, when we're protecting ourselves from the pain of that disappointment, we end up creating adaptations. And they're brilliant. They work for a while, and they work until they don't. Eventually these adaptations can become prisons. They can become the patterns that add to our exhaustion and can add to the other issue at the core. So let's talk about the 3 really brilliant adaptations that we can fall into when we're experiencing disappointment after disappointment after disappointment. The first adaptation that I want to talk about is overaction. So if you have ended up in a situation where you needed something and you didn't receive it, right? If life isn't giving me what I need, I'll just work harder. I'll learn more. I'll push more. I'll fix more. I'll do more. I'll take it on. I'm going to make this happen come hell or high water. And quite honestly, this looks productive. It feels productive. Yes, you're stepping in, you're doing, your days are filled, your calendar is filled, and you are going to make this happen. But underneath that productivity is often fear. And beneath that productivity is the underlying belief that if I just find the right strategy, if I finally prove myself good enough, if I work hard enough, then life will support me. Then the universe will support me. Then God will support me. Whatever your name is for that which is bigger than us, right? I will prove that I get to have what I want. I will literally make it happen. It's almost as if the image I just got is you're there, and let's say you personify that which is bigger than us as God, right? It's like you've reached around to God's hand. And you're like, okay, here we go. With all my action, I'm going to make this happen. Right? I'm going to take the clay that is the goo of the universe. I'm going to take it, and through my force and through my intention and through my continued action, I'm going to make it happen. Right? That's the first adaptation, is overaction. Another adaptation that we fall into, and this one can go hand in hand with the one I was just talking about. This adaptation is over control. Okay, so this manifests a little bit differently. So if through disappointment you've learned that support isn't reliable, it's not going to happen, I'm going to make sure that nothing is going to fall apart. So this looks like overthinking, over planning, monitoring everything, analyzing everything, guessing, looking out into the future, creating A to Z contingency plans, and having everything running like, it's just like clockwork all the time, and it has to be, and constantly figuring out, okay, this might happen, so I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, but having that whole plan in place. This is really mentally taxing, right? you're spending all your energy on the what ifs. Because if I have all of the what ifs figured out, I'm finally safe. Right? So it can be really hard to relax. It can be a real struggle to turn off. Okay. Stepping into that over control is an attempt to create safety. The problem with that is that control cannot create a feeling of trust in your being. Because if you let down, that when you get into this place of over controlling, your system learns, if I let down just a little bit, that's danger. And of course, that contributes heavily towards exhaustion. Okay, so we've talked about overaction. We've talked about over control. The third adaptation to constant disappointment and not trusting that support's going to be there is over reliance. And this one is an underpinning to both overaction and over control. Because with this adaptation, we're really saying we've stopped expecting support altogether. We stop asking. We stop asking the humans in our life. We stop asking the universe. We stop asking the divine. We stop receiving. We carry everything ourselves. And from the outside, this can look strong. Ooh, she doesn't need anybody. She's carrying that load. Man, she's resilient. But this is hugely exhausting. We were not designed to go through life alone. It's not our design at all. Okay. But something I really want to call out here is that all three of these adaptations, over action, over control, and over self-reliance, all of these adaptations are rewarded. So if you're somebody who overworks, you're called driven. If you're somebody who controls it all, you're called responsible. The person who carries everything alone, they're called strong. Okay? But we're not really talking about strength. We're not really talking about responsibility. And we're not really talking about being driven. Those three patterns are all about self-protection. They are about building a huge wall around our hearts so that we don't get hurt anymore. Does that work? Maybe. It works for a little bit. But here's the problem. When you go into self-protection, you block your natural ability to receive. You can no longer receive what you need from other people, and you cannot receive from the divine. You cannot receive any of the physical manifestations of divinity. You're going to have a hard time with time. You're going to have a hard time with money and abundance. You're going to have a hard time receiving love of any form, whether that love is self-love, whether that love is coming from other people, right? Being able to receive. And why does it matter that we receive? The universe, God, Goddess, divine nature, carries a unimaginable, uncountable number of solutions to whatever it is that you require. There are 1,000 different ways for divinity to bring you the solution. But when you are in that self-protection mode, you are blocking the flow. It's as if, think of a river flowing, right? If that's the divine, if that's universal resources, right? Think of it as this great big river. If you are self-protected, what you've done is it's almost like you've hunkered down at the bottom of the riverbed. You've built a self-sustaining wall around you. You've got a one of those like we always see in the cartoons, right? You've got the reed up above the water, through a little hole in the self-protected bunker that you've got, so you can breathe. You can breathe through. You're getting enough oxygen, but the river of resources is just flowing over you. Okay, to receive the resources and intuition and abundance and all of the partnership and connection, that requires openness. It requires a wide open heart. It requires participating. It requires asking and having enough trust to allow life to meet you. Repeated disappointment often convinces us of the opposite. Work harder, control more, depend on nobody. Okay. This does not allow abundance that stays. All of those strategies of working harder, depending on nobody, they don't address the underlying hurt. And they don't address the underlying fear that you are not enough to receive. You're not worthy of receiving. That there's something wrong with you, and therefore you're not going to receive. So, how do you get out of this pattern? I'm never going to tell you to stop taking action. That's not the answer here. I'm also not going to tell you to just, zen out and work on being in that absolute perfect place of peace, and then everything will be okay. But I'm also not going to let you pretend that disappointment doesn't exist, because that's how you got into the cycle in the first place, right? You're overworking, over controlling, over self-reliant as a way to not have to deal with that disappointment. The answer lies in learning how to stay with yourself when that disappointment appears. You want to be able to stay in that flow, right? If we're talking about the river as being the flow of divine resources or the flow of life itself, you don't want to hunker down in that bunker. You want to be able to ride the top of the wave of the water. Right? You have to learn to stay with yourself when disappointment appears. Okay. To do that, there's a number of steps that I take my clients through. You want to know more of your natural support structures, meaning you want to know at a deep level who you are and how your soul prefers to interact with the universe around you. I work with a paradigm called soul language. You have 3 personal soul languages, as well as soul money languages and business languages. And these languages are literally parts of divinity. They're part of the divine. And in your personal languages, they're literally woven into you. They're of you. And when you understand how you act and behave and prefer to go through life when you're in connection with this part of you, also when you're disconnected from this part of you, you have a brand new way of understanding how the divine is present with you in your day-to-day, and how to lean on the divine and talk to the divine. Okay? So whatever paradigm you work with, that's what you want to do. You want to understand more of your natural support structures so that when disappointment comes in, you know what to lean on. You know how to get questions answered. You get to know how to interface with the divine so that you can actually figure out and hear and understand how to move through it in a much more graceful way. Right? You also want to know how to work with the emotional discomfort instead of either letting it run the show or letting it run the show because you are completely turning your back on it. Okay. So you want to learn the skills that are going to actually heal the disappointment in the moment instead of needing some adaptation to work around it. I will include myself in this global we that I'm about to share. Many of us who get, when we first start to learn about spirituality, we're doing it because we're in some sort of existential pain. And there's a thought that says, if I just reconnect with who I really am, I'm never going to get hurt again. This is my way of never hurting. This is my way. This is going to be the way of avoiding any kind of pain ever again. And that's simply not true. Life is always going to life. To use language like Abraham Hicks, there's always going to be contrast. And there's always contrast because it's your soul's way of creating expansion. Okay. So this actually leads me into the next point that I wanted to make about moving through the disappointment. You get to begin to see those moments of disappointment in a brand new light. What if, when you have repeated disappointment, this is your soul's way of getting your attention because there's a way for you to expand and open to even greater gifts, bigger receiving. It's your soul's way of showing you what's been blocking you. What do you get to expand through so that now you are in this new expanded state, are capable of receiving what you've been asking for? When we buy into the story that disappointments mean there's something wrong with us, that's where the pain comes from. But when we can look at that disappointment, even the repeated ones, especially the repeated ones, when we can look at those repeated disappointments and take 3 giant steps back, take a deep breath and say, how is this meant for me? It's happening, so it must be meant for me. Yeah, I would not have chosen to do it this way. Yes, there's a lot of pain involved. Yes, you get to honor and acknowledge the pain that you're going through. You don't bypass that. Right, there are ways to work with that pain and suffering so that you can acknowledge it and really honor it and then let it move through your body. And then from that place, say, how is this meant for me? And listen, how it's meant for me is a question you get to ask yourself. When somebody else says it to you, when you share with somebody, oh gosh, I just went on, I just went on that date, and I've been seeing this guy, I've been seeing this person who I thought was going to be my partner, and something happened, and it's not going to happen. They're out of my life. And your friend says to you, well, gosh, I wonder what you're not seeing. I wonder how that's meant for you. No, right? These are questions we get to ask for ourselves. If you've got a practitioner of some kind who can hold the space so that you can get to that answer, or if you have a loving friend who, after you've honored and acknowledged all that you're going through, says, do you want to take it another step further? Yes. Okay, that's all right. And the how is this meant for me is a question you direct yourself. It's not meant to give, it's not meant as it's not a platitude, right? There's so many platitudes out there, and what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And oh, I wonder, if this person said goodbye to you, then somebody great must be coming down the pike. Yeah, again, platitudes, not always helpful. However, if you have this repeated pattern of disappointment, when you can remember that it is your soul knocking on your consciousness saying, look at me, see me, reconnect. This is your opportunity to double down on knowing your worth. This is your opportunity to double down on knowing you're good enough. This is your opportunity to double down on knowing that you don't have to earn your worth. You came in worthy and deserving, right? The process of moving through and gaining the wisdom from those repeated disappointments is easier when you can strengthen your own relationship with the divine, when you can strengthen your relationship with yourself. If you are dealing with abundance issues, strengthening your relationship with money. Okay? All of those are going to help you be able to take that experience of repeated disappointment and mine it for the gold that it actually is. Okay? Because please remember, the goal isn't becoming disappointment proof. This is not about building more protection around you. The goal is becoming able to experience disappointment in a way that doesn't end up building your life around protecting yourself from it. The goal is to be able to experience disappointment and not unplug from the universe. It's really easy to tell the story of, I didn't get what I wanted. I'm not getting what I want. So I must be the least favorite human on the planet. There's got to be something wrong with me. It's easy to fall into that trap. So the goal is, right? And when you do that, when you make that internal decision that there's something wrong, that you're not good enough, that you're unworthy, and you unplug from the universe, it becomes really, really hard to receive what you want. Okay. So, in addition to what I just said, if there's one thing I hope you take away from today's conversation, it's this. Many of the patterns that frustrate you today were once really intelligent strategies designed to protect you from disappointment. Problem is that what protects us in one season of our life can limit us in the next. At some point, what you're learning is not about working harder, but about learning how to feel safe enough to receive support, safe enough to receive love, safe enough to receive abundance, safe enough to receive life. Right? The goal is not to eliminate disappointment, because you would be disappointed. Because disappointment is always there. It is. But the goal is to stop letting disappointment convince you that you have to carry everything alone. When you learn that, something really remarkable happens. You stop relating to life as something you must constantly force. Instead, you begin relating to life as something you can partner with. When you partner with the flow of your life, when you partner with your soul, that's when receiving begins. Life starts to feel completely different. Okay? All right. If you found yourself in today's conversation, if you recognized your own patterns of overaction and over control or over self reliance, this is exactly the work that I help you uncover. Right? We explore where support stopped feeling safe, where receiving became difficult, and how to rebuild a relationship with life that doesn't require constant effort or pressure or emotional exhaustion. If that resonates, I'd love to invite you to book a conversation with me. I'll put the link in the comments below, because sometimes we just need someone else to help us see the survival patterns we've been carrying for so long that they've started to feel normal. You don't have to overwork. You don't have to overdeliver. You don't have to overcontrol. You don't have to over self-rely. You get to plug in and begin to receive. And I would be honored to help you with that path. All right, everybody. I have enjoyed talking with you today. And please reach out, or if you have any questions, or if you'd like to share about your own experience with over controlling or overaction or over self-reliance, put it in the comments. I'd love to hear. All right, everybody. Until next time, take good care. Bye-bye.